What up, YouTube? This is another video on Skepticus. I am your boy, Adam of Nola, and today we are diving into another video from Bible in Action, that wonderful AI slop channel that you Christians can't seem to get enough of. This one is called 7 Demonic Watches Christians Should Never Wear at All Costs. Oh, goody. Let's dive into this one, shall we?
Millions of Christians wear luxury timepieces without realizing they're carrying symbols of spiritual darkness and war crimes. These watch brands hide their demonic origins behind sophisticated marketing. But the Bible warns in 1 John 2:15-16, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world." These timepieces feed exactly the lusts God condemns. Today, we're exposing 7 luxury watch brands that appear prestigious but carry dangerous spiritual baggage. Some collaborated with Nazi regimes, others promote materialistic pride that contradicts Christ's teachings. We'll reveal their hidden histories and why wearing these brands opens doors to spiritual deception. Stay until the end. The last brand has shocking connections to concentration camps. Subscribe to this channel because YouTube hides videos exposing luxury brand truths.
Yes, YouTube hides videos that expose luxury brand truths. Now, at this point, this was just released in the last day, so it doesn't have a ton of views yet. It's like under 9,000, but it's getting almost 500 views per hour. So YouTube is really just hiding these videos because YouTube doesn't want you to know. Yeah, they are against it. Them are out to get you. Don't trust the YouTubes.
Now, let's start with the first deceptive watch brand. Rolex was found...
Deceptive watch brand. All I can think of is you think it's 9 p.m., but no, it's 7:30 a.m. They're deceiving you.
In 1905 by Hans Wilsdorf in London, and at first glance, it appears to be simply a prestigious timepiece representing success and achievement. The brand has masterfully marketed itself as the ultimate symbol of accomplishment, worn by world leaders, celebrities, and successful business people. However, the main red flag that reveals Rolex's spiritual danger lies in how it feeds the pride of life that God explicitly condemns.
Okay, so this is where we're going to go down the idea that if you have something expensive, this means that it's demonic, I guess, somehow. Now, don't get me wrong, having ridiculous luxury items is probably not the best idea, regardless of whether or not you are Christian or secular or atheist or what have you. But we could say the same thing about any luxury brand in the world. What does it have to do with Rolex?
The brand doesn't just sell watches, it sells status, superiority, and the illusion that material possessions define your worth. As Jesus warned in Matthew 6:19-21, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." What makes Rolex particularly dangerous from a biblical perspective is how it transforms a simple timepiece into an idol of social hierarchy and materialistic worship.
We could say the same thing about cars. We can say the same thing about suits or clothing, dresses. We can say the same thing about any other luxury item in the world that you can buy. Again, I'm not saying that you should go out and blow all your money on luxury items. It's probably a good idea to avoid them in general, but the idea that these are somehow demonic is demonstrably ridiculous.
Deliberately creates artificial scarcity, wait lists, and exclusivity that makes people obsess over owning their products.
Yeah, that's called marketing genius, okay? Every company in the world that can figure out a way to create exclusivity around their product will do so if they know how.
Feeding the lust of the eyes that 1 John 2:16 warns against. Rolex wearers often experience pride, superiority complexes, and judgment toward those who can't afford such luxury.
Rolex owners often experience those exact same things that he just mentioned. They don't experience that because of the Rolex. They were arrogant sons of bitches before they ever bought their first Rolex, to be sure. It wasn't the Rolex that made them arrogant and prideful. The Rolex is just a symbol of who they already are.
Attitudes that directly contradict Christ's teachings about humility. The Bible clearly states in Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." But that's not even the most disturbing aspect of this brand's spiritual impact. What's even more concerning is how Rolex has become a gateway drug to materialism and covetousness for many Christians.
So that's exactly what I'm getting at. So the idea that Rolex made you a covetous, arrogant bastard, but you weren't before you got a Rolex. No, it was the Rolex that made you that way. That makes total sense.
The brand's marketing psychology is designed to make people believe they deserve luxury as a reward for their hard work, feeding the prosperity gospel lie that material wealth equals God's blessing.
Ooh, they're going to attack the prosperity gospel here. That's interesting.
Many believers justify spending $10,000 to $100,000 on a single watch, while missionaries lack basic resources and the poor go hungry.
I like how we had to throw in missionaries there. Like missionaries are going hungry too. I mean, come on, dude.
This directly violates Jesus' command in Luke 12:15. Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. The obsession with owning a Rolex often leads to financial bondage, debt, and a distorted view of success that measures worth by worldly standards rather than spiritual fruit.
Because I'm a sarcastic bastard, I really think we need to start a new campaign that says WWJW, which is what would Jesus wear? Which kind of watch would Jesus want to have? Would he have a Rolex? Would he have some other high-end piece of timekeeping? That we need to start that trend. What would Jesus wear? They can put it in their marketing. They can take it. I don't mind.
If you found this concerning, wait until you discover what we've uncovered about Omega's military connections. Omega was founded in 1848 by Louis Brandt in Switzerland, and while it presents itself as a precision timepiece brand associated with space exploration and Olympic timekeeping, its history reveals disturbing connections to military operations and a dangerous obsession with temporal control.
A dangerous obsession with temporal control. Temporal control is basically a fancy way of saying understanding and knowing what time it is, which is what a watch or a timepiece is for. Okay, I really am looking forward to this. Or are they actually implying that somehow Omega controls time itself? Ooh. Now, that would be really interesting. I want to know about that, but I don't think that they do.
And gained prominence during both world wars by supplying timing devices to various military forces, including those involved in devastating conflicts that claimed millions of lives.
So because you provided gear to military forces, this somehow makes your product or your company evil? Don't be wrong. There are some companies that have supplied the military, which are probably pretty damn evil. But the idea that my company or my product is evil because it was used by the military is just patently ridiculous. And I can't help but wonder, you know, there weren't many organized corporations back in this day, but during their crusades, there had to be lots of people supplying stuff to those crusaders because they were hungry and they needed new gear. They needed new armor. Are those people all evil and demonic as well? How is it that just supplying the military alone is somehow demonic or evil?
The main red flag about Omega lies in how it has built its reputation on instruments of war and destruction, glorifying military precision that was used to coordinate bombings, attacks, and strategic operations.
Now, to be clear, I am not a pacifist or a warmonger, although I'm probably closer at this point in my life to being pacifist than the other extreme. But I would be the first one to tell you that if my country or my state or people that I know were involved in warfare, whether it was against their will or not, once they got into warfare, I would sure hope that they had precision equipment that would help them coordinate their attacks and help them to coordinate their communications. Because without that, you're probably, especially on a modern battlefield, dead in the water. So the idea that Omega provided these things that allows for precision attacks almost sounds like a strong selling point. Also, keep in mind that the thousands of people that are watching this video, almost all of them are Christian and most of them are probably American, and they probably love them some military. So I don't know if this is the best way to advertise this section of the content.
This directly contradicts the peacemaking spirit that Jesus calls his followers to embrace.
It doesn't directly contradict the spirit of the Old Testament God, I'll tell you that. Nor does it contradict the fact that Jesus said, I bring a sword.
As stated in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." What makes Omega particularly concerning from a spiritual perspective is how the brand has cultivated a cult-like worship around temporal precision and human achievement, rather than God's sovereignty over time.
What should any brand that sells retail items align themselves over? Do you want to say, hey, our product works like crap, but just trust God and keep buying our product for some reason? If you knew that the product sucked and all you could do was trust God, then would you ever buy that product? That makes no sense.
The company's marketing heavily emphasizes man's conquest of space, ocean depths, and athletic records, feeding the pride that makes humans believe they can master creation without acknowledging the creator.
Yeah, because there's nothing worse than human progress. Lord knows that God hates human progress.
Omega wearers often develop an obsessive relationship with punctuality, control, and performance.
How horrible. Omega wearers are often on time. You bastards. What's wrong with you? How dare you be on time? You son of a bitch.
Borders on anxiety and idolatry.
Are they idolatrating? Are they idolizing being on time? I mean, that just feels like a personal practice.
Bible warns in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven," reminding us that God, not our expensive timepieces, controls the timing of our lives.
So why don't we just all throw the watches out? Let's take every clock and every watch and just throw it out and say, you know what? God controls it. When are we meeting for dinner tonight, Joe? I don't know. Whenever God tells both of us to be there, that'll work. And that's also a great way to coordinate battles and strategic operations.
But what's even more disturbing is how this temporal obsession affects Christian priorities. The most dangerous aspect of Omega's influence is how it promotes a worldly definition of precision and excellence that can lead believers away from spiritual priorities.
So apparently, spiritual priorities are opposed to precision and excellence, which I can actually get behind that idea, but that doesn't speak very well for spiritual priorities. I guess that God wants you to be sloppy and imprecise.
Toward performance-based living, many Christians wearing Omega watches become consumed with earthly achievements, athletic performance, and professional success.
I like how they make it sound Like, these people had no interest in earthly achievements or athletic success or any other kind of excelling performance until they strapped an Omega watch on their wrist. And then all of a sudden, they were consumed with this idea. It's like putting a magic spell on them. Before you had the Omega watch on your wrist, you didn't care when you showed up. You didn't care when you woke up. You didn't care when you got out of bed. You didn't care if you got to work on time. But we put an Omega watch on you, and suddenly now you're obsessed.
Rather than spiritual fruit and eternal purposes. The brand's association with Olympic competitions and space missions feeds the competitive spirit and human pride that the Bible repeatedly warns against.
I feel like this is an advertisement for Omega. Omega should clip this part of this video, even though it's horrible AI slop, and they should make a commercial out of it. Like, yeah, this is the best marketing for Omega ever.
As Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 9:24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." However, Paul was speaking about the eternal prize of salvation, not earthly competitions. The obsession with temporal achievement that Omega represents can distract believers from the race that truly matters, their spiritual walk with Christ.
Yeah, tell that to your sprint team in the Olympics. Dude, you know what? I know I'm supposed to be part of this relay, but man, my rewards are in heaven. That's going to get you on the Olympic team real fast.
And now pay close attention to this next brand, because what we've discovered about IWC Schaffhausen's Nazi connections will shock you even more. IWC Schaffhausen was founded in 1868 by American watchmaker Florentine Ariosto Jones in Switzerland, and today it markets itself as a sophisticated timepiece brand associated with aviation and engineering excellence. At first glance, the brand appears to celebrate human innovation and technical precision, attracting successful professionals and aviation enthusiasts worldwide. However, the major red flag that exposes IWC's dark spiritual heritage is its documented collaboration with the Nazi Luftwaffe during World War II.
So a couple quick things here. First, we already talked about with Omega, where aligning yourself with military achievement is not exactly a horrible idea if you are a watchmaker. Now, I do understand. You can say, ooh, Nazis bad. And I agree with you. If we are going to demonize every company that coordinated or collaborated in some way with the Nazi regime, then we are going to have to wipe out a whole lot of companies. Basically all of the automotive companies from Germany, but so many other companies as well. I'm not trying to give them a pass for this, but if you have a major company in a country that then starts a global war, you don't have too many options. You either shut down your company and get the hell out, or you probably end up cooperating with the government on some level. And when you do that, yes, you are going to be collaborating with the Nazis. Again, I'm not trying to give these companies a free pass. And some of these companies are no doubt much more complicit than others with the overall workings of the Nazi regime. But the idea that this watchmaking company coordinated and supplied the Nazi Luftwaffe, and that alone makes them somehow evil, is incredibly specious and, quite frankly, silly.
When the company proudly manufactured specialized pilot watches for German fighter pilots who carried out bombing raids and military operations that devastated Europe.
Again, I want to point out that while nobody should ever like the Nazis or be happy that someone was involved with the Nazis, let's just look at this purely from a wartime perspective. If you are on a bombing raid, especially back then in World War II, timing was critical. They did not have the advanced radars that we do today. In fact, radar was created during World War II. The Germans didn't even have it. The point is that a lot of times The only way that you knew whether or not you were over the right target was based on your azimuth and the precise amount of time that you had flown at a certain rate of speed. So this is just how warfare was carried out in the 1940s. That's not necessarily some knock against a watchmaker.
This partnership with evil directly contradicts the biblical principle found in Ephesians 5:11. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. What makes IWC's Nazi connections particularly disturbing is how the company not only supplied timepieces to Luftwaffe pilots, but actively marketed these as precision instruments that helped coordinate aerial attacks on civilian populations and Allied forces.
Every bomber in World War II on either side of the divide ultimately prosecuted some air raids that killed civilians. That was just a sad fact of war.
Brand's famous Big Pilot design was specifically created to assist Nazi aviators in their destructive missions, making every IWC watch a symbol of collaboration with one of history's most evil regimes. While IWC has never properly acknowledged or repented for this dark chapter, they continue to celebrate their aviation heritage and pilot watch legacy as if it was something noble. The Bible is clear about our responsibility regarding evil associations, as stated in 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common, or what fellowship can light have with darkness? But the spiritual contamination goes even deeper than historical collaboration. The most concerning aspect of AWC's spiritual influence is how wearing their timepieces can open believers to the same spirit of pride, aggression, and dominance that characterized the Nazi aviators who originally wore these designs.
So wearing the watch somehow connects you to being a Nazi aviator. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Many IWC owners report developing an obsession with power, control, and superiority over others.
Okay, can I get some citations on this? Has there been a study conducted where we can see that IWC owners truly obsess over these things? Yeah, I don't think so.
Traits that mirror the supremacist ideology the brand once served. The company's continued celebration of military aviation and combat heritage feeds a warlike mentality that contradicts Christ's call to humility and peace.
If you put on this watch, you will become warlike. I can just see, like, my job gives me one of these watches, and next thing you know, I'm rampaging around the French Quarter with a sword and a machine gun like, I have the watch. Let's all go to war.
As Jesus commanded in Matthew 5:44, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Yet IWC perpetuates a legacy of aerial dominance and military aggression. Christians wearing IWC watches often find themselves drawn to aggressive business tactics, competitive behaviors, and a desire to dominate others rather than serve them. The spiritual contamination from this brand's Nazi past creates an atmosphere of darkness that can affect the wearer's character and spiritual sensitivity.
I'm going to need to see some kind of documentary footage about, like, well, you know, Joe was a really good CEO and a husband, and he was caring and loving toward everyone. And then he put on that IWC watch and he became a total douchebag. Man, he was aggressive and domineering. I don't know what happened, but I think it had something to do with the watch.
About Cartier's occult symbolism might be even more shocking. Cartier was founded in 1847 by Louis-François Cartier in Paris, and while it presents itself as the ultimate luxury jewelry and watch brand for royalty and high society, its origins are deeply rooted in serving the French aristocracy and royal courts that oppressed the common people for centuries. The brand built its reputation by creating extravagant pieces for kings, queens, and nobles who lived in opulent excess while their subjects suffered in poverty and hunger.
How dare you create timepieces for royalty? Yeah, I'm sure that's such a crime to actually create goods that you no doubt made a very good profit on that ultimately went to members of the royal family. And then obviously, once you provide those timepieces to the royal family, whatever the royal family does while they're wearing your watch is clearly a black mark on your record. Sure, that makes total sense. I'm really loving also some of the AI slop imagery here. Like you can see that they tried to do the numbers and they got most of them, but the 12 o'clock is like, basically it would be right here on your wrist, which doesn't make sense. You know, normally 12 o'clock would be at the top, but no, they didn't really know where to put that. So God bless you, AI.
The main red flag about Cartier is how it has always represented the spirit of aristocratic pride and social inequality that Jesus consistently opposed throughout his ministry.
Oh, we could also say the same thing about the church, but guess we don't want to go there.
The brand doesn't just sell timepieces, it sells the fantasy of royal status and aristocratic superiority that directly contradicts Christ's teachings about serving the least among us, as stated in Matthew 23:11-12.
Yeah, almost like when you go into a big fancy church that's full of expensive architecture and bejeweled items and all sorts of crazy stained glass. And yeah, that didn't take much money at all to build, did it? I'm sure you couldn't have possibly fed any poor people with that money.
The greatest among you will be your servant, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What makes Cartier particularly dangerous from a spiritual perspective is how many of their watch designs incorporate occult symbolism and esoteric elements that have
occult symbolism and esoteric elements. Let's go there.
Roots in ancient pagan traditions and secret societies. The brand's famous panther motif, while appearing elegant, has deep connections to ancient fertility cults and pagan goddess worship that the Bible explicitly condemns. Many Cartier timepieces feature geometric patterns, mystical symbols, and design elements that were historically used in occult rituals and magical practices.
Let me ask you something seriously. If 5,000 years ago, there was a cult that used the letter A, or what looks to us today to be a letter A. Maybe they called it something different, but it looks like a modern A. And they used it during all sorts of occult rituals. They did it during child sacrifice, and they used it during ritual prostitution and all sorts of other pagan, horrible, nasty ideas. And nowadays, I have no idea what that means or who used it in that way. I just know it's the letter A, and it's the first letter in my name. And I put it on, I don't know, my house, or I put it on my letterhead or something. Am I engaging in some kind of occult ritual? Am I opening a door to demons or Satan? Am I somehow complicit in what some random group of people 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 years ago did? Or is it just possible, just maybe possible, that these are symbols, and symbols change in meaning over time, and just because a symbol used to be used for something bad in the past doesn't mean at all that it has any bearing on the current day? I'll give you a good example of this. When I was in Chennai, in India, there are many shops that have swastikas on the front of their stores. Now, to a Western sensibility, you might think, oh, they have swastikas up. No, because first of all, they don't call it a swastika. That's a German nomenclature, but it is the same symbol, but it's an ancient symbol. And it's been used for many things throughout time. Of course, most recently, it's unfortunately been used heavily for the Third Reich, and that has poisoned its use in the West. But it was originally a symbol that meant, amongst other things, simply good luck. Now, I'm sure it's meant 50 other things as well. But if I were to have some watch that was made in India and somewhere discreetly it had a swastika on it, does that mean that I'm a Nazi? Does that mean that I love Nazism? Or does it just mean that, oops, I bought a watch that happens to have a swastika on it because the people that made this have an entirely different association with that symbol? Now, I do understand that in modern context, if I was to walk around in public with a watch that had a big, ostentatious swastika on it, that would not be cool, because where I live, that would be viewed by almost everyone around me as being a Nazi head kind of symbol. And I certainly don't want to ever be associated with that. But my point is, I know that this is AI slop, but these ridiculous connections don't make any sense. And I go on this little diatribe because Christians will eat this crap up. They think that this is cool. And if you don't believe me, look at the damn views on this channel. They are eating this crap up because they feel like, oh, I'm connected to this ancient wisdom, this secret knowledge about the occult and the underworld and the battle of good and evil, God versus Satan, angels versus demons, and I'm a part of it. I'm involved in spiritual warfare every day. No, you're not. You're just buying a damn watch. That's all it means. And maybe the watch is a bad idea. Maybe it's a good idea. It depends on how expensive it is. It depends upon your finances. It depends upon how much you idolize it. But other than that, it's just a damn watch. Get over yourself.
The Bible warns in Deuteronomy 18:10-12, "Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells,
or owns a Cartier watch.
Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord." But what's even more concerning is how these symbols can spiritually influence the wearer. The most disturbing aspect of Cartier's influence is how wearing their symbol-laden timepieces can open Christians to spiritual oppression and occult influences they never intended to invite into their lives.
Once again, I'm going to need some citations. Apparently, putting the watch on your wrist somehow opens you up to these influences. I really need to see some peer-reviewed studies on this.
Many believers who wear Cartier watches report experiencing increased pride, vanity, and an obsession with luxury that gradually erodes their spiritual sensitivity and compassion for others.
Yeah, because I'm sure that they were completely upstanding citizens before they put the Cartier watch on their wrist.
The brand's royal heritage and aristocratic associations feed a spirit of entitlement and superiority that makes wearers look down on those who cannot afford such extravagance. As James 2:2-4 warns, "Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts?"
So apparently, being a rich asshole doesn't make you snobby. It's putting the Cartier watch on your wrist that makes you a snob. Yeah, good to know.
The occult symbolism combined with aristocratic pride creates a spiritual cocktail that can lead believers away from Christ's heart for the poor and humble. But if you thought Cartier was problematic, wait until you see how Hublot promotes pure materialistic rebellion. Hublot was founded in 1980 by Carlo Crocco in Switzerland, making it one of the newer luxury watch brands. But in just 4 decades, it has become synonymous with the most extreme forms of materialistic ostentation and anti-biblical values. The brand deliberately markets itself to athletes, celebrities, and nouveau riche individuals who want to flaunt their wealth in the most obvious and aggressive way possible. The main red flag about Hublot is embedded in their very marketing philosophy: "Be first, unique, different," a slogan that directly promotes the pride of life and individualistic rebellion against humility that God commands.
Yes, individualism is bad. Don't ever be unique or individual. Just another brick in the wall.
The brand doesn't just sell watches. It sells the idea that you should stand out, be noticed, and assert your superiority over others through material display. This contradicts Jesus' teaching in Luke 14:11. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What makes Hublot particularly toxic from a spiritual standpoint is how the brand has partnered with some of the most morally corrupt industries and individuals in modern society, including professional gambling, excessive sports betting, and entertainment figures known for promoting sexual immorality and drug use. The company's sponsorships and partnerships consistently align with activities that the Bible clearly condemns, creating a brand identity that celebrates worldly excess and moral compromise.
If I had a watch company, I would try to create the exact same identity.
Many Hublot advertisements feature half-naked models, promote gambling casinos, and glorify the lifestyle of professional athletes known for their scandals and ungodly behavior. As 1 Corinthians 15:33 warns, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. But
how many heavily dressed models are there? Because he says half-naked models. Regardless of the social environment, if someone is known to be a model and they are there in a model capacity, I've never seen someone who's heavily covered in their modeling duties.
Spiritual contamination goes beyond just associations. The most dangerous aspect of Hublot's influence is how it has become the ultimate symbol of prosperity gospel deception, where material success is falsely equated with God's blessing and spiritual maturity. Many
I wonder if Joel Osteen wears one of these watches.
Christians who wear Hublot watches fall into the trap of believing that their expensive timepiece proves God's favor in their lives, leading them to judge less financially successful believers as somehow lacking faith or divine blessing. The brand's extreme price points, often $50,000 to $500,000 for a single watch, represent such excessive luxury that wearing one while claiming to follow Jesus, who had nowhere to lay his head, becomes a spiritual contradiction. As 1 Timothy 6:9-10 states, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. The Hublot mentality creates a spirit of greed and materialism that can completely corrupt a believer's spiritual priorities and witness to the world.
I know this is going to sound rather crass and brutal, but so much of this AI slop script is targeted toward not just Christians, but Christian po-folk. Because it's the po-folk who want to be like, oh yeah, how dare someone have an expensive watch? Yeah, that's evil. That's greedy. And don't get me wrong. If you have a $50,000 watch, you're probably a serious douchebag, but it's not because of the watch. Trust me.
And now let's examine how Tag Heuer promotes the dangerous spirit of worldly competition.
Worldly competition? Don't dare you compete. Oh, this is going to be good. I have actually had a Tag Heuer, although it was gifted to me.
Was originally founded in 1860 by Eduard Heuer in Switzerland, and while the brand presents itself as the ultimate sports and racing timepiece, it has built its entire identity around promoting the spirit of worldly competition, speed obsession, and the relentless pursuit of victory at any cost.
Yes, at any cost. Tag Heuer, the watch that's on your wrist, says, I don't care if you have to cut their Achilles tendons. I don't care if you have to bash their kneecaps. Just win at any cost. I'm sure that's part of Tag Heuer's marketing brochure.
The company gained prominence by timing Formula One races, Olympic events, and other competitive sports, where winning becomes more important than character, sportsmanship, or godly conduct. The main red flag about Tag Heuer is how it
Yes. When you are in the middle of a competition, during the duration of that competition, whether it is 10 seconds or an hour or whatever, of course, winning becomes hyper valued because that's the whole point of entering the competition in the first place. If you're going to stop 50 meters into the 100-meter dash and you're going to bow to Mecca or pray to God, then just don't even bother trying to be a sprinter because you're never going to succeed on any level. If you're going to stop halfway through your Formula One race so that you can have a prayer session and a Bible study with your friends before you resume the race, then I can tell you right now, don't even bother.
glorifies the competitive spirit that makes people prioritize defeating others over serving them, feeding the flesh's desire for dominance and superiority.
This was written by an AI that has never taken part in a single competitive event in their entire life.
This directly opposes Jesus' teaching in Mark 9:35. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last."
Yeah, Jesus said that while he was sitting down. If Jesus and the rest of his disciples were running from a bear, he would not have told you that you should be last. That is not a recipe for success.
It measures human worth by performance and victory. What makes Tag Heuer particularly dangerous from a biblical perspective is how it promotes a winning at all costs mentality.
There is nothing about Tag Heuer that makes it dangerous from a biblical perspective. No one in the Bible had a Tag Heuer.
That has corrupted many Christian athletes, business people, and professionals who wear the brand. The company's slogan, "Don't crack under pressure," encourages believers to rely on human strength and determination rather than trusting in God's sovereignty and timing for their lives.
What should their marketing slogan be? Should it be "Pray under pressure"? Like, hell, we can't help you. Just hope God fixes it. Maybe that should be a marketing slogan for any company. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Many Tag Heuer wearers develop an obsession with speed, efficiency, and competitive advantage that leads them to compromise moral principles, neglect family relationships, and sacrifice spiritual priorities for worldly success.
Like I said, I used to have a tag. I don't even think I have it anymore. It was gifted to me. Trust me, it did nothing to make me obsessed with speed. I am a slow white dude. There is no watch you can put on my wrist. There is no rocket pack that you can strap to my backside that is going to make me faster than even the average old dude walking down the street.
The Bible warns in 1 Corinthians 9:24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." However, Paul was referring to the eternal prize of salvation, not earthly competitions where only human glory is at stake. But what's even more concerning is how this competitive obsession affects Christian relationships. The most disturbing aspect of Tag Heuer's spiritual influence is how it breeds a spirit of comparison, envy, and relentless striving that destroys the peace and contentment that should characterize a believer's life.
Yes, because that was all brought about by the Tag Heuer that you strapped to your wrist.
Christians who embrace the Tag Heuer mentality often become workaholics, perfectionist parents who pressure their children to achieve at any cost, and church members who turn ministry into a competition rather than service. The brand's association with high-speed racing and extreme sports feeds an adrenaline addiction and risk-taking behavior that can lead believers into dangerous situations and poor decision-making. As Philippians 4:11-12 teaches, "I have learned to be content."
I don't know. When I had the Tag Heuer, I was a Christian. So I guess it did lead me into poor decision-making.
Whatever the circumstances, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. The Tag Heuer spirit directly opposes this biblical contentment, creating a constant need for more speed, more achievement, and more victories that can never truly satisfy the soul. The obsession with temporal competition distracts from the eternal race that truly matters.
Do they think that everyone who ever puts on a Tag Heuer becomes a race car driver or a sprinter? Like, that's the only reason to even put a Tag Heuer on your wrist?
Our spiritual walk with Christ. But what we're about to reveal about Audemars Piguet's concentration camp connections will completely shock you. Audemars Piguet was founded in 1875 by Jules Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet in Switzerland. And while today it represents the absolute pinnacle of exclusive luxury watchmaking, its darkest chapter occurred during World War II, when the company was involved in using forced labor from concentration camps to maintain production during wartime. Historical records reveal that, like many Swiss manufacturers, Audemars Piguet continued operations during Nazi occupation by utilizing prisoners and forced laborers who worked in horrific conditions to create luxury timepieces for the wealthy elite. The main red flag about this brand is not just its historical collaboration with evil, but how it has never acknowledged, apologized for, or made reparations for profiting from human suffering and slave labor.
Now, I will freely admit that I have not heard of this brand, and I don't know what their connection is to slave labor. I've said before in this video that just because you supplied the military, even when your side was proven horrifically wrong, doesn't necessarily mean that your company is horrifically wrong. That being said, if your company was using slave labor and using the people from these camps and such to continue to crank out their products during wartime, it's pretty unexcusable. I would have to look this one up. But seeing as how the creator of this video didn't look anything up, I don't think I'm going to bother either.
Violates the biblical principle found in Proverbs 14:31. Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. What makes Audemars Piguet particularly evil from a spiritual perspective is how the brand has built its modern reputation on extreme exclusivity and artificial scarcity.
Once again, the exclusivity and scarcity thing, that is called marketing. It's good marketing. It's genius marketing. It doesn't make them evil. It just means that they know how to market their product. That's called capitalism. And you can say what you want about capitalism. I have my problems with it at times too, but being able to successfully market your products is hardly evil.
That creates a cult-like worship among wealthy collectors who will pay any price to obtain these timepieces.
What's the alternative to this? Should they only crank out the absolute maximum that they can every year and flood the market with their products and do everything to market their product as though it's lowly and pointless? Is that somehow better or more Christ-like? I don't think any of this has anything to do with Christianity, despite the fact that the dupes who are clicking on these videos actually probably think in the same way.
The company deliberately produces very limited quantities and maintains waiting lists that span years, creating an obsession among buyers that borders on idolatry. Many AP owners develop such an emotional attachment to their watches that they prioritize the timepiece over family, ministry, and spiritual responsibilities.
Well, I would probably prioritize any watch I own, even if it was cheap and shitty, over ministry and spiritual responsibilities. As for prioritizing your watch over your family, I don't know. Do you have a crappy family? I mean, I don't think that's generally a good thing to prioritize them, but maybe your family sucks. I'm not sure. I'd have to meet them to find out.
The brand's most famous model, the Royal Oak, regularly sells for $100,000 to over $1 million, representing such extreme luxury that it becomes a symbol of everything Jesus warned against regarding wealth and materialism. As Matthew 19:23-24 states, "Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God."
So is the problem with the rich person's assets, the trinkets that he or she owns, or is the problem something much deeper that has nothing to do with watches?
But the spiritual contamination runs even deeper. The most horrifying aspect of Audemars Piguet's influence is how wearing a timepiece created through a legacy of human suffering and slave labor can open believers to the same spirit of oppression and exploitation that characterized its wartime production.
No, it does not. It has nothing to do with it. Even if a company was the most disgusting during World War II and participated in all of the Nazi regime's BS, the fact is that if you were to go out today and buy a timepiece from them in this present day, that has no connection with what happened literally 80 years ago. Now, I know people will say, oh, but the company was bolstered and helped by this horrible practice and this slave labor back in the time, and maybe they wouldn't even be here anymore if it weren't for that happening. And that might be true, but that doesn't mean that somehow if I were to put a watch on my wrist today from that same company that was manufactured today, that it would somehow open a door to spiritual harm because the company did something shitty 80 years ago. That does not follow.
Many AP owners report becoming increasingly callous toward the poor, developing an elitist mentality that views less wealthy people as inferior and losing their compassion for human suffering.
Again, I'm going to need some citations here. It says that many of them report this. So even if you had a study about these watch owners, would it really be, please tell us if you have become more callous or less callous to human suffering since you bought your watch? Who's going to mark down, oh, I've become more callous. Yeah, I've definitely become more callous. Like, I've become more arrogant. I've become much more of an asshole. Like, that doesn't happen. Come on, man. You're making this shit up, which I guess is perfectly aligned with AI slop. I guess you could call it hallucinating if that makes you feel better. But this is still posted by a human who's actually directing AI to make this content. So it's still ridiculous. We're going to cut this off here because we're almost at the end of this silly video. I've mentioned on a previous video, I'm going to say it here. You might wonder, why am I even going through these AI slop videos? But here's the deal. This channel has just recently started blowing up because they figured out that if they play on this ridiculous demonology aspect, it's like catnip to Christians. Christians who want to be manipulated, who are looking for some way to feel like they're part of this big spiritual battle. And, ooh, watches are bad. Ooh, let me watch that video. And it's even easier to buy into this crap when, of course, the watches that they're saying are evil are also associated with those who are wealthy, because the people watching these videos aren't billionaires or millionaires. The people watching these videos and liking these videos and subscribing to this utter shite are just looking for some way to feel better about their own sad lives. Thank you for being here. Please like, please subscribe, please send me $100. Please share this video with a friend. I hope to see you again soon. Until I do, lo, I say unto you, stay skeptical.